Imagine a place shrouded in ancient dread, a terrifying orphanage nestled deep within the Philippines' dense mountain forests. This isn't just any old building, it's a fortress of unimaginable mystery, a place where secrets whisper through the trees and the very air hums with an ancient dark power. At its heart lies the legend of a witch believed to be the world's first woman, worshipped in secret by masked devotees, the very same devotees who ensnare two innocent siblings, Isa and Thomas. Little do these two know they've been connected to this terrifying entity since the moment they were born. What dark secrets are hidden in their past? What does this witch truly desire? We're about to uncover it all in a chilling story ripped straight from a newly released Filipino horror tale called Lilim, which, let me tell you, means Lilith's worshippers. And right from the opening scene, this story grabs you by the throat and refuses to let go. We're plunged into the eerie silence of the orphanage where strange paintings adorn the walls and unsettling idols stand watch. But the tranquility shatters in an instant when, from one of the rooms, a severed human hand suddenly tumbles into view. As if that weren't enough to make your skin crawl, we then see a bag lying in the jungle, and it's filled with more of these gruesome hands. It's a truly shocking visual that immediately sets a tone of absolute dread. The scene then shifts dramatically, throwing us into a different kind of horror. From a house near the very same jungle, we hear the piercing scream of a child. Inside, a man's lifeless body lies sprawled on the floor, a gruesome sight, while a small boy, absolutely trembling with fear, sits beside him. This child is Thomas, and his older sister, Isa, her entire body smeared with blood, tries to comfort him. Thomas, bewildered and terrified, asks her why she did it. Her chilling reply, "I had to. Father won't hurt us anymore." It quickly becomes clear the man on the floor was their father, and Isa, in an act of desperate self-preservation, had killed him with her own hands. He had subjected them and their mother to terrible abuse ever since their mother's death. This wasn't just murder, it was an act born from prolonged, unbearable suffering. This was 1983, a year that would forever haunt them, as Isa meticulously scrubbed the crimson stains from her hands in the washroom. The mirror's reflection suddenly showed her father. Her heart leapt into her throat. A gasp caught in her chest, but when she spun around, he was gone. Was it just her mind playing tricks on her? A phantom of guilt and trauma? Or something far more sinister at play? The line between reality and hallucination was already blurring for Isa. Later that same night, after the horrifying deed, Isa, with the terrified Thomas by her side, fled their home. The murder had already created a buzz, a widespread panic, and the police were hot on their trail. As Isa drove their car through the winding roads of the jungle, she confided in Thomas, revealing the dark truth that their father's cruelty wasn't reserved just for them. He had brutally abused their mother too, even when she was alive. It was a lifetime of torment that had finally reached its breaking point. But then Thomas noticed something unsettling. His sister wasn't driving towards their grandmother's house, a place of potential refuge. She was heading in a completely different direction. When he questioned her, Isa simply stated that she would take care of him herself. They weren't going to their grandmother's. This declaration ignited a furious rage in Thomas. He knew what his sister had done, and he was far from happy about it. In a desperate attempt to reason with him, Isa pulled the car over and tried to explain, but Thomas, overcome with a mix of fear and anger, refused to listen. He bolted from the car, disappearing into the dense dark woods. Isa's heart pounded in her chest. She was consumed with worry and began searching for him, alone in the vast, unforgiving jungle. As evening gave way to night, the shadows deepened, and the jungle became an even more ominous place. Isa's desperate search yielded nothing. Finding a small boy in such a vast, dark forest was an impossible task. Then, in the gloom, she spotted a woman in the distance walking with a heavy bag. What immediately struck Isa was the woman's complete lack of hair, and then, in a blink, the woman vanished behind a tree, leaving Isa utterly bewildered. As Isa peered behind the tree, trying to comprehend what she had just witnessed, a noise from the side made her turn. There, standing right beside her, was the very same bald woman. Before Isa could react, the woman viciously attacked her, and Isa crumpled to the ground, losing consciousness. In her unconscious state, Isa experienced a terrifying vision. She saw several bizarre paintings, along with a menacing, powerful entity completely shrouded in a large sheet. Just as the vision intensified, Isa's eyes fluttered open. She looked around, disoriented, and then noticed a light flickering in the distance within the jungle. Drawn by it, she cautiously moved towards it. She soon came upon a massive building. As she watched, a figure on the upper floor of the building, seeing her, quickly withdrew from sight. Isa noticed that the entrance to the building was open. With a mix of trepidation and hope, she stepped inside. This, Isa soon realized, was an orphanage, and the strange paintings she saw inside were the very same ones she had glimpsed in her unsettling vision earlier, and even at the very start of our story. As she took in the bizarre artwork, a shadowy figure darted past her. Thinking it might be Thomas, Isa immediately gave chase, heading up to the upper floor. There she found the most peculiar painting of all, one with a hole where one of its eyes should have been. Hearing a noise from a nearby corridor, Isa cautiously moved towards it. A few steps in, a chilling sensation crept up her spine. She felt as if someone was standing right behind her. Gathering every ounce of courage, she turned around. There stood a boy, trembling uncontrollably, which caused Isa to recoil in fright. Startled, she pushed him away and began to run, her heart pounding in her chest, but her escape was cut short. Standing at the main gate were two nuns surrounded by several other sisters. They urged Isa not to be afraid and brought forward the boy she'd just encountered, introducing him as Gabriel. They began to interrogate Isa, asking her where she had come from, why she was there, and how she had gotten the injury on her head. When Isa hesitated to answer, one of the nuns, Margot, intervened, telling them not to press her so hard. Margot then kindly asked Isa for her name. After Isa provided it, she immediately asked if a small boy had come to the orphanage. She fabricated a story, claiming their car had broken down near the jungle, and Thomas had accidentally wandered off and gotten lost. Upon hearing this, Margot led Isa to an upstairs room. There, a nurse was putting Thomas to bed. Nurse, seeing Thomas safe and sound, a wave of relief washed over Isa. However, Thomas was still angry with her and refused to speak. Margot explained that they had found Thomas outside the orphanage and he didn't seem to remember much. She suggested that if Isa stayed with him, he might feel better. Since there was nowhere else to go, Margot offered them a place to stay for the night. In the room with Thomas, Isa noticed other children, all of them strangely bald. Isa quickly whispered to Thomas, warning him not to tell anyone anything. She assured him she was there now and would handle everything. Afterward, a nun escorted Isa to a room, telling her she could stay there for the night. There were some old clothes she could use. Isa asked if anyone else lived in the room. The nun replied that the last girl who stayed there had left in a hurry, leaving many of her belongings behind, and Isa shouldn't mind. Isa was looking through the items when she realized the nun had already left, so she locked the door. Meanwhile, in the dead of night, Thomas suddenly awoke, terrified by an empty space in the ceiling above his bed. He immediately began to pray. Neil, the boy in the bed next to him, asked what he was doing. Thomas was surprised by this, as children in orphanages usually knew more about prayer due to their constant interaction with nuns. But Neil told him they were safe here and had no need to pray. He even mentioned that some of them were lucky enough to be adopted, including his friend who had been taken in by a couple recently. Their whispered conversation disturbed another sleeping boy who told them to go to sleep. They both lay down. It was then that we saw it, a terrifying presence watching Thomas from the empty space in the ceiling above his bed. Isa also couldn't sleep. She overheard two sisters talking as they passed her room. They were referring to someone as mother and saying that she hadn't been hungry for quite some time, which brought them a sense of relief. Another sister, however, warned that they still needed to be prepared. These cryptic words struck Isa as incredibly strange. Now, back in the outside world, the investigation into their father's murder had already begun that very night. Isa and Thomas were the police's primary suspects. It was to escape this escalating crisis that Isa had ultimately decided to stay at the orphanage for a few days. At breakfast, Margot informed everyone about Isa and Thomas's extended stay and instructed the children to be respectful towards them. Margot also revealed to Isa that the orphanage's financial situation was dire. They could only send a very small number of children for adoption, which meant they couldn't provide good quality food. Their tight budget dictated everything. Isa asked if donations from a church could help. Margot laughed, explaining that they didn't receive funds from any church. Rather, the orphanage ran entirely on donations. At that moment, a boy named Prince started bothering Thomas. He was so defiant. He didn't even fear Margot's scolding. Margot advised Isa to keep Thomas away from Prince, as he was a troublemaker. Isa then noticed something curious. She only saw boy children. She asked if there were any girls. Margot explained that they were only 8 nuns managing the entire orphanage, and it was simply impossible for them to oversee and educate both boys and girls simultaneously. Thus, they exclusively kept boys. After finishing their meal, Isa took their plates to the kitchen. There, 3 sisters were laughing amongst themselves, but they immediately fell silent upon seeing Isa. They told her to leave the dishes and go. However, as Isa placed the plates down, she noticed a room from which sounds were emanating. Curious, she approached and found a small child who, instead of eating with the others, was watching pictures through a device. When Isa inquired about it, the child handed her the device. Isa began looking at the images. At first, everything seemed normal, but then a bloody, horrifying picture flashed before her eyes. Just then, a nun called her from behind, sternly telling the child to leave and informing Isa that Sister Margot was waiting for her. Isa quickly went to meet Sister Margot and thanked her for the shelter. She made another request to let them stay a little longer. She couldn't even say how long they might need to stay. Margot assured her that she could leave whenever she wished and stay as long as she needed. They genuinely wanted to help Isa. Isa felt a surge of relief and happiness. Then, burying her sorrow, she made one more request to Margot. She asked that if she couldn't make arrangements for herself, Margot should give Thomas up for adoption to a good family. She didn't want to be separated from Thomas, but if she couldn't manage, she hoped Margot would help. Margot reassured her on this matter as well. From that day on, Isa decided to help the nuns at the orphanage. A nun began showing her around the orphanage. During the tour, she encountered Gabriel again. The sister remarked that Gabriel was a diligent boy, but sometimes behaved strangely. As they continued their tour, Isa paused in front of a dark corridor that led to a room. When she asked about it, the sister explained that it was Mother Mirasol's room, the superior of the orphanage. She was not only the head, but also the oldest nun, which was why she mostly stayed in her room. They never disturbed her unless it was for an important meeting, and going near her room without reason was strictly forbidden. Isa then questioned the sister, noting that Margot had said there were 8 of them, implying there were actually 9. Before the nun could answer, another sister arrived. She handed Isa a broom and instructed her to clean Margot's room. Isa understood that to stay here, she would have to perform various chores. Meanwhile, we saw Thomas playing with the other children. Prince, holding a mask, asked the other children who would be Mother Mirasol. No one volunteered, so he handed the mask to Thomas and declared that Thomas would be Mother Mirasol today. Thomas, bewildered, asked who that was. Prince gleefully explained that Mother Mirasol was a monster in the orphanage who hunted children for dinner. Little Thomas was terrified. Prince then bothered him by making him wear the mask before leaving with his friends. Neil, however, stayed by Thomas's side. At that moment, Isa was cleaning Margot's room. There, she discovered a gun. Margot warned her to stay away from it. She explained that a few women living in such a secluded place in the jungle with children needed guns for protection, especially since many wild animals appeared in the dark of night. She warned Isa and Thomas to be careful and not to go out at night. Isa understood and asked Margot if she ever watched movies. Margot replied that they didn't have time for such things, and then left. Just then, amidst the music playing on the radio, a news bulletin suddenly broadcasted information about Isa and Thomas. They were being identified as their father's murderers. Before anyone else could hear, Isa quickly shut off the radio. Later, while bathing, Prince continued to bother Thomas. When Neil tried to stop him, Prince was rude to him too. Thomas, in a fit of anger, clenched his fist. This only made Prince more furious, and he taunted Thomas, saying he had brought his sister to protect him, but even she couldn't do anything to Prince. Thomas then retorted that his sister would kill Prince and cut off his limbs. Before Prince could respond, a sister arrived and quickly told them to go to bed. Before going to sleep, Isa visited Thomas to remind him of their secret. She urged him not to share it with anyone. Thomas, however, expressed his desire to leave, saying he didn't like it there. Isa insisted that they had everything they needed, and she was there to take care of everything. In response, Thomas blurted out that Isa had killed their father. Isa immediately silenced him, pleading for his trust. She then returned to her room and lay down. In the middle of the night, she woke up, seeing someone standing in front of her. The figure slowly climbed onto her bed and attacked her. It was her father's doppelganger. This terrifying nightmare jolted Isa awake. She checked her surroundings and, seeing everything normal, she fell back asleep. The next morning, as the sisters led the children downstairs, Thomas suddenly stopped in front of one of the paintings. Just then, a humming sound emanated from the dark corridor nearby. Thomas moved towards it. Through a gap in a door, he saw a nun, completely bald, changing her clothes. Upon seeing Thomas, she looked at him with a creepy smile. Margot then appeared, glaring angrily at Thomas. Isa hadn't seen Thomas since that morning. When she asked the sisters, they offered no answers. She then went to a room and saw Margot cutting Thomas's hair. Isa was somewhat surprised. Margot explained that they followed this practice to prevent head lice. Since Thomas didn't seem to have a problem with it, Isa didn't either, and because Thomas was silent, Isa assumed everything was fine. Sister Margot then instructed her to clean the floor. Isa wanted to talk to Margot, but Margot left before she could. The sister's behavior struck Isa as very odd. Later, she went to the kitchen to put something away. At that moment, she thought she saw someone standing in the room beside her, but a moment later, no one was there. As she pondered this, a scream came from upstairs. Isa rushed up and saw a nun who had accidentally broken an idol. The other nuns were furious with her over this. She was told she had to atone. The penance involved walking barefoot over the broken pieces of the idol. Her foot was cut and blood flowed. Despite the pain, she endured it, repeatedly stating that she was offering her suffering to the one who had protected her for so long. While the others stood by in silence, Isa couldn't bear to watch. She rushed to help the sister, but as soon as she approached, the sister turned on her in anger. Margot also told Isa to stay away from the sister. Isa couldn't comprehend any of their rules or beliefs. So later that night, crying, she cleaned up the broken glass and blood. Another sister then approached her, holding the idol, and explained that it was a symbol of the one who embodied the suffering of all women. Isa didn't understand who she was talking about. The sister then revealed she was speaking of Adam's first wife, Lilith. From her words, Isa learned that everyone in the orphanage worshipped Lilith. The sister then went on to praise Lilith's various qualities. During this, her gaze fell upon a locket around Isa's neck, which she stared at with an unsettling intensity. Isa was quite taken aback by her behavior. Meanwhile, another sister meticulously removed all the glass shards from beneath the injured sister's foot and stitched it up, a painful process that clearly caused the sister immense suffering. Elsewhere, Isa sat in her room, engrossed in a book she had found in a drawer. It contained a wealth of information about Lilith. The moment she uttered Lilith's name, an eerie atmosphere descended upon the room. A gentle breeze began to stir, and Isa noticed her clothes were stained. This prompted her to go downstairs for a bath. Meanwhile, Prince woke Thomas with a shout, telling him he was giving him another chance to protect himself. If Thomas failed this task, Prince vowed to make his life miserable, but if he succeeded, Thomas would be free. Prince whispered the task to him: steal girls' undergarments from the laundry room. Neil tried to warn Thomas against it, but Thomas knew there was no other way to escape Prince's torment, so he agreed to Prince's terms. Poor Thomas, alone and terrified, was making his way down the corridor when Prince's friends suddenly scared him from behind, slamming a door shut. Isa heard the noise. She quickly changed her clothes and rushed out, but found no one there. Then she saw the painting again. The eye of the painting seemed unnatural, so she moved closer and watched as an eye mysteriously receded into the painting. Startled, she hid just as a sister emerged from a room. It was Sister Margot. Isa discreetly followed her. Meanwhile, Thomas had reached the laundry room. As he reached into a basket for clothes, he saw a terrifying hand in the room in front of him. It withdrew inside and then reappeared a moment later. Isa, meanwhile, had followed Margot to the main door. As the door opened, someone left a tiny newborn baby in a basket. Margot picked up the infant and went back inside. Isa quickly hid. From her hiding place, she saw two sisters coming downstairs, frantically searching for Thomas. They had discovered Thomas was missing and feared Mother might have already caught his scent. Although Isa didn't fully grasp the meaning of their words, we, the audience, understood the horrifying implication. The monstrous entity Mother Mirasol was after Thomas. But before she could get him, someone dragged Thomas into the darkness. His scream alerted the sisters, who rushed in that direction. Thomas had been saved, it turned out, by Sister Helena. Later, all the students were given a chance to confess their guilt. Specifically, the one who had forced Thomas into this act was asked to step forward. Eventually, Prince confessed, stating that he was tired of being with these children and wanted to leave, which was why he had been acting mischievously. Margot became enraged upon hearing this. Meanwhile, Isa was with Thomas. When Thomas regained consciousness, she asked him what had happened. Thomas didn't remember much, only saying he had seen something. As he spoke, a headache began, so he lay back down. Isa was deeply troubled, struggling to understand what was truly happening in this orphanage. Later that day, while Isa was working, she heard a baby crying from one of the rooms. A sister stood there holding a tiny baby. Another sister, with a very strange expression, abruptly shut the door in front of Isa, leaving her even more perplexed. Later, during lunch, Sister Margot arrived with ice cream for all the children. She announced that parents had been found for Prince and they wanted to adopt him. Prince was overjoyed at this news. However, Gabriel, who was also present, appeared worried about something. Isa also felt a pang of suspicion. Just last night, Prince had been involved in that incident, and today people were already found to adopt him. It seemed too convenient. Later that day, Margot took Thomas to his room. Thomas was happily eating the ice cream. Margot told him that the sisters made the ice cream right there. Thomas mentioned that his mother also made ice cream, but she didn't use coconut. Margot then asked him if he had seen anything last night. Thomas remained silent for a moment. Margot then began to explain that the orphanage was built in a special place, very close to angels. She claimed that angels watched over the orphanage. She suggested that Thomas had seen one of these angels last night, and since angels never hurt anyone, Thomas should accept it. Thomas seemed to accept this explanation. Margot then warned him not to share this information with anyone. That night, after everyone had fallen asleep, Isa went to the painting. She had been suspicious of this particular painting for some time. When she pushed firmly on the wall beside the painting, a secret door was revealed. Hearing two sisters emerge from a room, she quickly slipped inside the secret door and hid. From a small hole in the painting's eye, she watched them. Three sisters were going somewhere together. They went to Prince and brought him with them. Everyone was there to bid him farewell. Isa observed the other sisters lighting candles around, as if preparing for a special ritual. Prince was then made to wear that distinctive mask. All the sisters waited in front of Mother Mirasol's room. Sister Helena then sent Prince inside the room to say goodbye. Mother Mirasol lay on a bed covered by a sheet, still wearing the mask. Sister Helena told Prince to speak close to her ear, as she couldn't hear well anymore. With that, she locked the door. Prince was utterly terrified. Helena insisted that Prince had to say goodbye to Mother, otherwise they wouldn't let him leave. Reluctantly, Prince approached the bed. At that moment, through the gap, Isa saw Sister Margot retrieve the gun and aim it directly at the door. Margot stood there, reciting a very strange prayer, which Isa realized meant she was likely sacrificing Prince. If Prince tried to escape in any way, Margot would shoot him. And meanwhile, Prince discovered that there was only a pillow under the sheet on the bed. Just then, two terrifying hands shot out from under the bed and grabbed his legs, pulling him down. He fell and looked under the bed. From beneath, a horrific witch emerged. Only Prince's screams could be heard from outside. Just then, Issa heard a noise from beside her. She was filled with an immense fear in that dark room. Suddenly, Gabriel came from behind, clamping his hand over her mouth and signaling her to be quiet. He led her through a secret passage, bringing her into the room off the kitchen. It was through this room that Gabriel had been coming and going. He seemed to know something. Issa desperately questioned him about the orphanage, but Gabriel simply told her to be quiet and gestured towards the ground. Issa didn't understand what he meant. Gabriel left without another word. Issa realized that this place was not safe for her and Thomas. The next morning, she tried to talk to Thomas. She told him they would escape as soon as they got the chance. But Thomas couldn't understand why Issa wanted to leave now when she had been so adamant about staying initially. Issa explained that she had hidden many things from him from the beginning. She had intended to leave Thomas alone here, believing some family would adopt him. Thomas was shocked, asking if she had really meant to abandon him. Issa assured him she no longer wanted to leave him. She would take him with her. Thomas, in turn, apologized. He admitted he couldn't help her when their father abused her, as he was too young to understand or resist. Issa embraced him, telling him not to speak of it. It was clear that Thomas no longer held any anger towards Issa for killing their father. Just then, the sisters arrived and called Issa to speak with them. Margot informed Issa that a couple was coming that night to adopt Thomas. Issa quickly stated that she had changed her mind. She had found a temporary shelter and she would be leaving with Thomas that very day. Margot's demeanor changed instantly. She told Issa that enough lies had been spoken. It was time for them to be honest with each other. She claimed to know Issa better than Issa knew herself. With that, she produced a photograph from a box. It was a picture of Issa's mother, Esther. Margot revealed that Esther had been the previous Mother Superior of the orphanage. They had never imagined Esther would run away. She even revealed that Issa's name, Isabel, had been given to her by Margot herself. Then Margot unveiled her true identity. She removed the cloth from her head, revealing her bald scalp, and declared that they were Lilim, worshippers of Lilith. Issa would never be able to leave this place. At that revelation, Issa seized the moment. She grabbed a heavy object and struck Margot on the head, knocking her unconscious. As Issa tried to escape, she saw sisters emerging from the front room and two more coming from downstairs. Trapped, she was forced to hide in the secret room behind the painting. The sisters had already discovered Margot's unconscious state and were now searching for Issa. Knowing this, Issa tried to find an escape route through the dark corridor. She discovered another door besides the kitchen door, which led to Mother Mirasol's room. She opened the door and stepped inside, immediately assaulted by a foul odor. She pulled back the cloth, covering Mother Mirasol on the bed, and saw another white cloth covering her face. Just as she was about to investigate further, she heard a commotion outside. As she approached the window, she saw a severed hand lying on the ground below. She realized with horror that it was Prince's hand. Looking out the window, she saw two police officers who had come searching for her and Thomas, as their car had been found nearby in the jungle. A glimmer of hope returned to Issa. She desperately called out for help through the window, but they couldn't hear her. Just then, the injured sister entered Mother Mirasol's room, clamped her hand over Issa's mouth, and dragged her away. Meanwhile, Sister Helena had opened the door for the two police officers. When they asked about Isa and Thomas, Sister Helena denied everything. She claimed they had nothing to hide and that the two siblings hadn't come there. Officer Fred stated he wanted to check inside. Helena couldn't refuse and was forced to let him in. The other officer waiting outside eyed Helena with deep suspicion, which Helena clearly noticed. Fred went inside to speak with the students, leaving his partner outside. Inside, he saw one of the children wearing a mask. It was Thomas. Fred immediately recognized him. Just as he was about to confirm this with Helena, he saw the injured sister emerge from the room, pulling out a gun and shooting his partner outside. Fred quickly reacted, rushing out and shooting the sister. This sent Helena and the other sisters into a frenzy. Helena screamed, rushed to the fallen sister, and picked up her gun. The other sisters seized Fred. Before Fred could comprehend what was happening, Sister Helena confronted him and struck him with the gun, knocking him unconscious. As night fell, all the sisters changed into different dresses, as if preparing for a ritual. They went to Mother Mirasol's room, where upon moving the bed, a large pit was revealed beneath. This, it seemed, was where the witch resided. They lit candles around the perimeter of the pit. Meanwhile, Isa and Fred were tied to chairs. When Fred realized this was Isa, the person he had come to arrest, he asked her who these nuns really were. Isa explained that they were Lilim, card-carrying members who worshipped Lilith. Not only that, Isa added that she wasn't afraid of them, but of a terrifying witch. She told him about Prince's severed hand. Before Fred could formulate a plan, a nun came and dragged him away. Isa was deeply disturbed, realizing something terrible was about to happen to Fred. In that dark room, she sensed someone's presence. It was Sister Helena. Helena told Isa that she was completely unworthy of all this. Margot was wrong, and Isa didn't deserve to be a Lilim, but she told Isa not to worry about Thomas because they were going to sacrifice him tonight. Isa thrashed about, but there was nothing she could do. From there, Helena went directly to the children's room. She brought Thomas with her to Mother Mirasol's room. Officer Fred was also there. Thomas screamed, calling out for his sister, but Helena forcibly dragged him to the edge of the pit. Standing there, they began to awaken Lilith. Isa, meanwhile, was tied up in the room inside the kitchen. She saw the secret door within that room shaking by itself. Isa felt a surge of fear. Just then, Gabriel emerged from it, warning her not to scream. He freed Isa, and they both started to flee. But Margot appeared before them, gun in hand. Margot didn't shoot them. Instead, she told them that they were all part of Lilith's plan. She knew Lilith had chosen Isa, so when Lilith entered Isa should fulfill her duty. Margot claimed she had fulfilled her own duty. With those words, Margot shot herself. The gunshot startled Helena and the others. Helena quickly tried to push Thomas into the pit, but Thomas struggled free from her grasp. Seizing the opportunity, Fred grabbed Helena and jumped into the pit with her. Seeing this, another sister rushed forward and threw Thomas into the pit. Meanwhile, Gabriel was devastated by Margot's death. He sat beside her body, weeping uncontrollably. Perhaps he had viewed Margot as a mother figure since childhood, which was why he was so heartbroken. Isa, however, didn't have time for grief. She grabbed the gun and set off to find Thomas. Meanwhile, Thomas and Fred had fallen into the pit. Fred approached Thomas. It was then that they saw Lilith alive, tearing at and devouring Helena, but Helena, instead of suffering, was actually praying to Lilith as if she were offering herself as a sacrifice. The horrifying sight of Lilith terrified both of them. Fred told Thomas to hide. But Lilith had already seen them. Thomas quickly hid behind a rock, and Fred stepped forward to protect him. Right in front of little Thomas, Lilith brutally devoured Fred. His screams echoed. Reaching the nuns outside, just then Issa arrived, gun in hand. Strangely, even though one of the nuns had a gun, they lowered it. It was as if they were compelled to obey Isa. Isa ordered them to move aside. They complied. Seizing the chance, Isa used a rope ladder to descend into the pit. As she reached the bottom, she saw Fred's and Helena's bodies. Her thoughts immediately turned to Thomas. Just then, a sound came from the side. Isa moved towards it and found Thomas hiding there. As she approached him, Lilith appeared. Though she hadn't seen them yet, Isa secretly led Thomas to the rope ladder and urged him to quickly climb out. But before they could escape, Lilith was upon them. Isa was stunned by Lilith's terrifying, witch-like form. She tried to stop her by brandishing the gun. Meanwhile, Thomas climbed out. Isa then fired shots at Lilith to stop her, but it was useless. The gun was now empty. Isa desperately tried to climb out. Lilith clawed at Isa's leg. Isa kicked her down and scrambled out of the pit, but Lilith wouldn't give up. She climbed out too. In that moment, Isa felt as if it were her father. Just then, someone shot Lilith directly in the forehead. It was Thomas. Little Thomas had done it to save his sister. Isa embraced him, comforting him. Then the two siblings, aiming the gun, emerged from the room. The nuns stood before them, but none of them tried to stop Isa and Thomas. In fact, one of them even had a smile on her face. The reason for this would soon be revealed. Isa and Thomas slowly descended the stairs, Isa limping on her injured leg. They saw the helpless children of the orphanage watching them from hiding. Thomas stopped midway, insisting he wanted to help those children. Isa tried to explain they didn't have time, but Thomas argued that if they left them there now, they wouldn't be able to save them later. So Isa agreed to Thomas's plea. She told him to wait there and went back to get the children. As soon as Isa left, Thomas descended the stairs to where Margot's body lay. The events had seemingly stripped Thomas of his fear. As he looked at Margot's body, someone seemed to call his name. From a painting in the adjacent room, a voice called him. Thomas stood before the painting, utterly bewildered. Just then, screams erupted from the upstairs room. Thomas rushed to the upper floor. What he saw there left him horrified. His only friend, Neil, lay dead, and Isa was devouring him alive. Gabriel screamed, trying to save the other children. Thomas, witnessing Isa's monstrous transformation, also began to scream. It was then we understood. The claw mark Lilith had inflicted on Isa's leg was causing this. This venomous scratch meant Lilith had likely entered Isa's body and was now completely controlling her. Thomas fled in terror, and we saw the image again. It was a picture of the orphanage, with Isa visible on the upper floor. Her soul, it seemed, was trapped within that painting, and Lilith's soul now inhabited her body. Lilith had been living in the body of an old woman, and she had been seeking to change bodies. And for this purpose, she had chosen Isa. The nuns knew this. That's why they had been happy to see the claw mark on Isa's leg. Now, they presented the tiny newborn baby brought last night to Lilith, to Isa. Lilith, now within Isa, was overjoyed to receive the infant, and with that, our story concludes. And here's the biggest twist, folks, the one that ties everything together. Isa, as it turns out, was not Thomas's biological sister. Many years ago, she had been brought to this very orphanage to be sacrificed. At that time, Thomas's mother, Esther, was working here as a nun. She felt an immediate maternal connection to Isa from the first moment she saw her. So, to save Isa, she fled the orphanage with her. Later, she married Thomas's father, and Thomas was born. But Thomas's father was not a good man. He subjected Isa to various forms of physical abuse. Eventually, he killed Esther through his relentless abuse. And it was to protect herself and Thomas that Isa ultimately murdered him. From Margot's chilling words, we understood that this entire chain of events was Lilith's elaborate plan. She had chosen Isa, this young girl brought for sacrifice from childhood. Lilith intended to enter Isa's body in the future. And this, my friends, is why everything unfolded as it did. This Filipino horror story, Lilim, is a truly unique and terrifying tale, one that leaves you questioning the very nature of evil and sacrifice. What a ride, right?